Before we start the meeting, though, I'll ask Gary to open it with the opening prayer this morning.
Thank you, Worship. Lord, we ask your guidance in our deliberations so that the decisions we take enrich the lives of the communities we serve and enhance the environment we administer. Amen.
Amen. Thanks. Thank you, Gary. Okay, so as I say, very warm welcome. Hopefully it doesn't get too warm. I still see some of us are stuck with the neckties, despite the Parliament not requiring them any longer. Anyway, moving on. Apologies, we have none. Everyone's in attendance. Thank you very much for that. Item 2, disclosures of members' interest. Do we have some? Phil and Roger. Yeah, eyesights, I presume. Well, probably vacate the room would be the best for that one. Yeah. Was there any other conflicts or disclosure, really, rather than conflict? So that's item 2. Late items. Do we have any? There are none. Confirmation of the order of the meeting. I haven't had anything to change that, so can I move and seconder? Elwyn and all those in favour? Contrary, carried. And the item 5, any councillors' updates on attendances that they need to bring to the council? Quickly round the table. Oh, yeah. Yep.
BIL site, which was a really lovely opening of a weekend event. It was really great. Just a couple of things on Untitled Road. We've had some interesting road closures down at the Horahora end, which has really compromised a number of events being held down there. And I think probably the Takapoto was the most affected, but then also affected by COVID. So that completely wiped it out. Lots of events on down there that have forced traffic up through the other side of the neighbourhood. We had skiing all weekend down there, so much use of Arapuni and the top end of the river space as well. I have to say thank you very much for the sealing of the Mangatatri Road piece that's down by near to the domain, because with the volume that was going through in traffic and the metal, the dust was horrendous for those people that lived above it. So they also meted it down to tar seal so that it was safer for the volume that was going through. But that was a good strategic move for them to do that. And the other thing is just very quickly on the Hicks Road, we've got our final rural farming deal to be signed off very shortly. So that'll be just about the end of that Hicks Road spring story, all of 6 or 10 years of going through. We have still some new, sort of residential blocks that are struggling, but I think we've probably just about got all those signed off. So top work by Martin as well. And that's in communications and just working with people. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. Yeah, you're right, Andrew. Cool.
Yeah, I went to the Stragglers Club evening the other day, so that was to thank the sponsors. The Stragglers group are a group of people that have got old 60s cars, old American cars and that type of thing, and they raise a lot of money and give out some money every year to families that have got children that have got health issues and things like that, disabilities, and so they, as Waipa are a sponsor, they want to thank all the sponsors, and I think Jim went to that as well. So it was a great evening and a great group of people. Also attended the Cambridge Safer Community Trust monthly meeting, which was also good. So that's it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I've participated in the Heritage Month, and I have to acknowledge Dee and the district libraries and the work that they're doing in promoting that Heritage Month. I think it's a great initiative. I've actually done 2 walking tours of Cambridge, which took me 2.5 hours on each occasion. So either it's a long distance or I talk too much. I think it could well be the latter. But I did a presentation on the first 10 years of Cambridge, and tonight I'm doing another presentation on the built heritage of Cambridge, which, as you know, is phenomenal. So I might be a little bit of an early leaver this afternoon from the workshop.
No, right? No. Susan? No. Mike?
I just went to the same event that a few of us went to, that IPL, the launch of the cycling, which was really good. Good to see a lot of locals along there too, including a lot of locals, including kids that we've had at school in those cycling events. So it was really nice. And the other thing, a bit of an aside, but just leading up a transition from primary school winter sports into clubs in Cambridge at the moment. So it's quite big for the town. Got another meeting tonight, but so far the comms that have gone out have been well received. So yeah, it's quite a big mindset change for parents in the community, but hopefully it'll all go well.
Thanks, Mike. Hazel?
Not a great deal. I've except to say that the Kihi residents and ratepayers group have come out of their hibernation again, and I'd say watch this space. We're very fortunate, thanks to Marcus, that a very good person has moved into our neighbourhood that is going to help the people there, the ratepayers group, but they're putting together a submission into the LTP, and which is good. So they're involving all the community in doing that. And I also had a lovely meeting with the Māori Women's Welfare League, not in this past month, but certainly the month before. And it was a combined meeting with all the other Māori Women's Welfare Leagues for quite some distance around us. And it was amazing just sitting there listening to them roll out their plans about health and exercise and everything, and what they need to say to councils. And you just feel like saying, well, yes, say it, but what strong woman. There must have been 50 of them there. And, you know, you can say, well, you know, great stuff, Māoridom, go for it.
Thanks,
so
Hazel.
it was all very rewarding.
Yes, thank you. Just to verify that the Friends of Memorial Park had a meeting, and they've actually formalised their infrastructure. We've actually got now a facilitator with that. I've stepped aside a little bit just to carry it on. We had minutes, etc. Had a meeting with Corinne and Gina, and we actually talked with Mark Harrop, and we're trying to get that community rewards for juniors at schools. And we're working on that, and I'm hoping to have something within the council chambers where we can have neutral position and we can act that infrastructure together. Hopefully we can get that going off and in the next week or two and start.
Thanks,
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So a couple of meetings I've attended recently. So the Regional Connections, which is a transport meeting between regional council and other councils. Looking at increased connections, and particularly airport, how we can include the airport in that. Sorry, am I echoing really badly? Yeah. Yeah, sounds screechy, don't I? So anyway, look, the idea is that trying to bring the airport into the mix, and it's a really good group of people around that table. So hopefully, there'll be some progress there. Lots of discussions on Cook Street in Cambridge recently for me as well. So Cook Street, of course, is where we've got Cafe 9 and a number of other businesses, and we're looking at how we might improve parking and also the footpath in that space. Attended the Lions Club as a guest speaker in Cambridge also. I mean, the Lions Club, of course, in Cambridge are almost, they are the biggest Lions Club in the country, but they're phenomenal in the work that they do in our local town. But they're very interested in what's happening in our LTP, very interested in the growth and the plans that Cambridge has. Of course, they're linked into so many different organisations themselves. So, it's good to connect with them. And just want to mention the fire exhibition at the Cambridge Museum, which both Jim and I attended the opening of that. Really impressive. Great to just reflect on history of Cambridge and where our local fire brigade and the work that they've done over the years and how they all started. So if you get the opportunity, go and have a wee look at that. And just lastly, the District Promotions Committee meeting, which a number of us attended. So we have more events, extra events that we have recently added to and funded, but in particular the Takapoto Estate. That's the show jumping that's happening on this weekend and last weekend. So And I should mention that, is it Taekwondo, Marcus? What else do we fund? That's it, yeah, yeah. So just mention that as well. Thank you.
So the things that I've attended are the Pirongia Cycleway meeting, and again, progress is still painstakingly slow. In fact, we're considering, a different route out of Tuamutu, which might just make things a bit easier. And I just take my hat off to the community people that are still as enthusiastic as ever, about, realising that vision. And there's a group that's convened by the Regional Councillor for Climate Change, the chair there of their committee, Jennifer Nicol. There's a climate change sort of discussion forum that's available to any councillor actually. And so I took part in that. We had one at the beginning of February, and it's about every 6 weeks on a Friday afternoon, just like a Zoom meeting. So if anyone's interested in that, you just hear what the other councils are doing, and just I guess it's a forum where if you've got ideas or you're wanting something to happen, there's a supportive forum for bringing things forward. And lastly, I attended the Pirongia Community Association meeting last week along with Bruce actually, and things that came up, well, there was a civil defence thing because they're developing a community plan at the moment, and so there was a presentation about being prepared and a question about Anzac Day service at Pirongia, because that sort of only been going for a few years, but it's incredibly well attended, and just working out a more sustainable way to have sort of a small committee working on that. And lastly, the rubbish collection. And as you may recall, there's been a discussion around this table about the piles of rubbish that get, or the bags that get piled up at certain points around the district. And so Pirongia's got one on the corner of Franklin and Baffin Street, which is going to be ending soon. And so anyone that places a bag there is going to be fined $400. So that wasn't well received by a couple of the people at the meeting. And I'm really hoping that, just those particular issues from a council perspective are sort of given a message well to the people, and hopefully that we can, find a way forward so that their needs and our needs can be reconciled.
Jim. Claire was dead right. She was under attack with the yellow bags at that meeting, so I just lay low for a while and tried to explain that it's not council's responsibility, and it's the contractors, and but whether they're located and put out they were quite hot about it. So I think the next meeting they're going to get Enviro Waste and someone else there, Sally Fraser, to try and explain what the rules are. Right. So I attended the first ComSafe meeting of the year. There's a few problem issues, a lot of relating to domestic violence. There's new drugs on the market now which are cheap and dangerous, and the youth of this local, I have to say Tuamutu, need to understand that if you throw, like it might to tennis guys through a match and all the pampas grasses and a fire just took out, didn't realise that it would burn like that. From a neighbourhood point of view, many residents are searching for what to do with local issues, and the police can't. They can only do so much. So there's a lot of problem areas. Our CCT roster, it's difficult to get volunteers to go on that, to sit in front of a screen for 3 or 4 hours to assist the police. So now we're going to employ another community patrol administrator to help solve those problems, 10 hours a week, paid position, because you can't expect volunteers to do it all the time. We're financially secure, which is great at the moment, but very mindful that things can change. And so we've got to look after our sponsors and those that support us, and to be seen and getting out and around. We've got vehicles, but they've got to be driven and being seen out there, because it's not costing council a cent for 2 of the vehicles. So that's their main thing. So good. We're happy at the moment, except for the trouble that is out there, and it's quite eye-opening when you are told what's happening in your local community. No one really realises it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Pretty quiet on my part, but just building on the fines for dumping rubbish. Jenny and I were down the Manawatu, and I see in Masterton they got signs up. You get whacked $5,000. So when I saw that, I said to Jen, "Gosh, our 400's pretty reasonable." But yeah, same problem. Look, I had the pleasure of going to the Catholic school down here to the French class, which has been run by Dee Jally, who used to work for council, and I gave a talk on the relationship with Le Quinois. I was talking to Al Livingston, getting a few more details on how it really started. Plenty of questions, and I took over all the books and paraphernalia that I bought back from the 100th anniversary, and they were looking through those, and they've decided to have a half-day trip over there with the kids and their teacher, go to the stained glass in the church, and then have a look at the interpretation and the plinth down there. So yeah, it was quite good to let a lot of people know about that. Yeah, it's good. Thanks.
I said I would do. The Justices of the Peace had their annual general meeting this month, and what we're looking for now, and I thought here's the captive audience, is our younger people to take up the role of Justice of the Peace in our community, because, you know, we older ones are getting older, and our numbers are dropping off as they, so if there's somebody in the community that you know here in Te Awamutu, or even in the surrounds, because we go right out to the coast, that you could see, that deserves, that you could nominate, just let me or Anne Rawson know, and then we'll get on with the nominations to get them, because this is a service that is, we're being a little bit overworked at the moment, those of us that actually run the clinics and do things. But I think it's a good reward for those people in our, it's not a reward, but it's a recognition of the people in our community that can perform that task. And we really, over the age of 30, you know, that from 30, and we say between 30 and 80, but some of ours are over 80. So it's, yeah, so please, if you know of someone, please help us to get some more appointed. It's quite a long process, but we need them. And the other thing I forgot too was the walk around Kihi on Sunday.
Oh, no, Saturday at 1 o'clock.
Oh, that's right, beg your pardon. Saturday at 1 o'clock. We're all being taken on a historic walk. Thank you. Sorry, Jim, and thanks for your indulgence.
Thanks, Hazel. And look, from the JP perspective, look, there could well be some people, councillors that know of people in the community, and we need just to keep our eyes open. There could well be a number that we could put forward, something that they just probably, younger ones just don't think about. Yeah. So thanks for that. Look, the number of the events that have been mentioned, I attended as well, but probably and haven't got enough detail, and we probably need to set some time aside. But yesterday I was in Wellington, local government. It wasn't a national council meeting, it was a committee meeting. A couple of them talking about the potential changes, I suppose, to local government. We won't call them reforms because that's theoretically not happening, but it could well, the changes are going to be such that there's going to be quite significant changes apart from the three waters that we're all pretty well versed in now. But the changes to the RMA, which we've all been asking for, not only local government, but business as well, for a number of years, is happening apace and being replaced by those three acts that we're the Natural Built Environments Act, the Strategic Planning Act, and the Managed Retreat and Climate Change Adaptation. So, and I just mentioned to Gary, just as an aside, that we probably need to debate it fairly in detail, I suppose, around the council table, just how actively involved we want to be in trying to, I suppose, influence the direction that it's going, because it's going to happen. There's no doubt about that. The representatives from DIA that were at the meeting, the government has got the numbers and is intent on obviously delivering on some of its election or all of its election promises, I presume. But the reform of certainly the Resource Management Act is one of the top priorities. But it seemed to me that there was a huge gap in the knowledge of some of the DIA, just what officials, just what actually happens in local government. And I believe, and probably biased, that we deliver a lot of services to the community that the central government really isn't aware of, and what is actually the problem that needs to be resolved, and rather than just putting a solution in place before they've actually worked out what we really need to do to deliver the well-being for our communities. So there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done, both by us and local government New Zealand. Certainly local government New Zealand at the moment is a little bit, because it's a membership organisation and because of the speed of change, don't really have a feel for how the various councils across the country want to go on a number of these changes. And I posed a question yesterday to the Department of Internal Affairs as to who's paying for all of this. You know, is it ratepayer, taxpayer funded? And they said, oh, we'll come to that, as we were moving through a slide presentation, and we never got to that. So there's some quite significant changes, and with the RMA, and it's not the regional council, but they're talking about effectively establishing what our spatial planning work has been done around the Waikato, but establishing a committee that's made up of all of the identifying 14 regions they're talking about at the moment. So I'm not sure where the boundaries are, but assuming it's the Waikato region. And this committee that would be setting the plan for the whole region, made up of representatives from each council, regional council, and the central government agencies like DOC and health and social welfare and all of the agencies that have got to spend, and they will be responsible for setting a region-wide plan. So if you assume that the council only has one rep on that committee, the influence is going to be pretty low. And just what that could result in terms of a one-size-fits-all regional plan, and what the implications and costs associated with that could well be. So, yeah, look, I think realistically there's going to be a lot of changes, and we need to just have some time to just consider where we sit on some of these issues, and be prepared to make submissions and offer some assistance to local government New Zealand in terms of these discussions with central government. We have a rural and provincial meeting 2 days next week, Thursday and Friday. On the Wednesday, I'll go down early, and we're meeting, this is the National Council of Local Government New Zealand is meeting with the central government reps, including the Prime Minister. So, look, we need to get our message across. I was going to say surprised, that's not right. It was even more obvious that Wellington don't understand what's going on in the provinces in terms of what local government does. The Wellington view is theoretical, I suppose, and not that practical. So obviously the more information we can provide, the better we're going to be. But look, significant change is coming. I think we just really need to focus on what we do for the community, how we look after our people here, and that's the focus really, and set up systems that are actually going to deliver that in the future. But yeah, my feel is that that changes are really coming, and as I say, at pace. And waters, the 3 waters will be the first off the block, but definitely the RMA very closely following that. And when you think about how much of our time and resources is spent on 3 waters resource management planning type work, it's a significant part of our business. And when you look at other council areas that are smaller than us, the impact on them is going to be even more. So whilst the rhetoric is there's no plan to reform the local government bodies, I suppose, throughout the country, it may just happen through stealth, I suppose, in terms of just those smaller organisations not being able to resource what they need to do. So yeah, interesting times, if you want to call it that, coming up, but certainly a lot of changes, and probably need to just try and get the positives out of it and see what we can do to look after our communities, which is what we've been elected for. So yeah, so interesting times. As I say, a lot of information needs to come before the council, and the decisions made, whether we just lie back and think of England, or whether we get actively involved in trying to change how the changes are going to take effect. Right, so that's probably, and the only just I was going to say minor, but the event that I attended just over the weekend, the Rangiawhia commemorations, the main day event was postponed because of the COVID scare, but they did have iwi, particularly Ngāti Apakura, had a blessing at Rangiawhia on Sunday morning, which was kept fairly quiet, but it was well attended by probably between 60 and 70 odd people, but and it's still obviously a very raw event that happened, and was appropriately recognised, I would say. All right, so moving on, the item 6, confirmation of the council minutes of the 15th of December. So can I have a mover and seconder to receive those? Lou and Marcus. And if we go through those just quickly, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. So just go quickly through them if there's any corrections or any issues that have come up from those. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and okay, 7, 8 and 9. Okay, everyone happy? Move Roger that they're true and correct record. Seconded Phil. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Document signed under council seal. Gary, is there anything there you wanted to?
No, nothing that stands out, Your Worship, other than the tender for the shared tower cycle walkway path. A long time coming, so it's great to see that underway. And there are a whole raft of warrants signed for officers due to changes in legislation, etc.
Thanks, Gary. Any questions? No. Andrew moved, seconded Phil. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Item 8, Rangatautari Reserve Committee resignations and appointments. Joe going to handle it.
Good morning. I'm just going
Well, I'll switch off.
I'm going to take my report as read this morning. This is just seeking your approval to accept 2 resignations and 1 new appointment to the Rangatautari Reserve Committee. Any questions?
Pretty straightforward. Anyone got any queries? Yeah, Liz?
Query, but I guess I just want to sort of vouch for Tahiti, who I've worked with for many years, and what a fabulous asset she'll be going on to the Rangatautari Committee. But I also just want to acknowledge I guess, the work of the predecessors. And I know I can see from here that Fred has been, his letter of resignation was some time ago, but in particular, Ted, more recently, his contribution to that committee has been invaluable. It has been the span of tens of years, I imagine. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's appropriate that a letter of thanks go to Ted in particular. Perhaps we include Fred in there as well, unless that's already been done, I don't know. Probably not.
I'll check that, and if it hasn't been done, we can make sure that that's arranged.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's something else more we can do for them, actually. Just feel that contribution has been enormous. Yeah, not too sure what's appropriate, but perhaps that can be looked at.
Thanks for those comments. We'll follow that up, definitely. So, okay. All right, so the recommendations A through to C. Mover, Marcus and Al. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Item 9, the adoption of the Mystery Creek noise calendar. This is an annual event. Wayne,
Thank you, Bishop.
Might have time to sit down, Wayne.
Carl Tutty's in court today, so his apologies, but the calendar has been consulted on. It's on page 27 of your agenda at Appendix 1. So between Wayne or I, we may be able to answer any questions you have, but it's something that comes to you annually for consideration.
Thank you for that. So no questions. We have Liz and Lou, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Item 10, sorry Gary, service delivery review, eyesights. And can we note Roger and Phil are vacating the chambers? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So the current contract with Eyesights is due to expire on the 30th of June 2021, and that contract stipulates that we would conduct a review 3 months prior to the expiration date. So the direction from this council on the 27th of October on the workshop for external grants was that you would like to proceed with a review. So this report just seeks a formal decision on that matter. The other thing to note was that I've attached to that report a copy of the 17A review that was completed at the end of 2017. So we are proposing that we engage an independent consultant to complete this work who will have the relevant experience within the tourism background, and that this piece of work is simply refreshed and presented to council with recommendations. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks. Like it's an important piece of work, Debbie, but I'm aware that central government are doing that, or they're proposing that some of the eyesights are going to be funded centrally, and that information isn't going to be available till pretty close to the time, when the contract expires. So do you think it's likely that our eyesights would be, benefit from that extra funding? I mean, I don't know if it will, so that was my biggest question. Should we proceed with this, getting a consultant to do this review when that's quite an important factor, I guess, for the future funding of the eyesights possibly? What's your feel?
So the timing of that piece of work should be ready at about the same time as our piece of work would finish. So you'd have both pieces of information at the same time in order to make a decision. So I think it's probably still useful to refresh the data that's in that 2017 report. It just enables you to make a good decision in that space.
I just have to say this because every time I see it, I'm totally aware of the population of New Zealand not necessarily all having digital thingies. And I just, you know, it's becoming more and more, and given that a lot of our visitors that come into the country are retirees from other countries as well, they've done a survey and found that most of them anyway have got their digital thingamies, mostly a telephone, or you don't call it a telephone any longer, do you? But you know, to actually take that into consideration, because I see it missing now in quite a lot of places, that consideration is given always to whoever that consultant is, that they have to remember that the population of New Zealand is very high in your non-digital people that use the eyesight. I live here and I use the eyesight regularly to find out what's going on and where to and all the rest of it. So, and I think it's really valuable. Good to see this, but yes, just remind them of the wider population. Thank you.
Yes, so I note that the 2017 report does mention that bricks and mortar is still important to a great number of people, and we wouldn't want to preempt any findings on that. Yeah.
I just putting it out there, I accept, I think it's the only way forward, but I just have to question $30,000 for a refresh. Is that like market rate? Am I in the wrong business or what?
Liz, could you just flick it on?
Yeah, I think that the other reports that I've seen, I see out there, that is about the market rate. Unfortunately, we're in the wrong business. You're quite right. Quite right. And I think it's more than a refresh potentially anyway, because the whole environment, a lot of the environment feels like it's changed, as mentioned in the report. So I suspect they'll be starting from scratch.
Look, I think using the word refresh, because the recommendation is not just a refresh, that's part of it, but it's a full review that we're talking about. So, yeah. Okay. All right. So if everyone is comfortable with the recommendations, can I have a mover and seconder? Bruce and Claire. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Deb, could you let Phil and Roger know? Thank you for that. Item 11, a resolution to exclude the public. Mover and seconder, Andrew and Claire.